My wife ignored Mu Epsilon for weeks. Until one morning, we were gone. My son Caleb is upstairs finishing his homework. Meanwhile, it's just me and Lauren, my wife of 6 years, sitting at the dinner table. I'd love to say we were having a deep, meaningful conversation, but the truth, it was dead silent. She barely touched her food, just pushing it around with her fork like she was lost in thought. At first, I assumed maybe she had a rough day or she was just tired, but the way she kept avoiding eye contact, something was off. So I finally spoke up, "Everything okay?" She stopped moving, then she looked up at me, and that was the moment everything changed. "I think we should try an open marriage," she said. I swear, for a second, I thought I misheard her. I blinked, my brain scrambling to make sense of what she just said. She didn't even hesitate or laugh, she just leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, and said, "I just think maybe we should have more freedom, explore things, it could make our relationship stronger." Stronger. My mind was racing, but at the same time, it felt like everything just slowed down. There was no shame in her voice, no guilt, it wasn't like she was testing the waters or worried about my reaction. She had already made up her mind, and that's what scared me the most. I could have blown up right there. I could have demanded to know what she was thinking, if there was already someone else, if I was just the last to find out, but I didn't. Instead, I just sat there for a moment. When I finally spoke, my voice came out calm, steady. "That's not the marriage I signed up for." I kept my eyes locked on hers. "If you're tired of this, just say it." She didn't flinch, didn't waver, she just shrugged and said, "I figured you'd say that." Then, just like that, she stood up, picked up her plate, and walked away. It was like she had already moved on in her head, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't a conversation, it wasn't even a request, it was a decision she had already made. She wasn't waiting to see what I thought about it, she was just informing me. And later, I found out exactly where this was coming from. Lauren had a friend who did the same thing, talked her husband into opening their marriage while still keeping his money, his home, and his stability. And Lauren, she had been watching, waiting, imagining herself in that exact situation. She wanted the best of both worlds, a husband for security, other men for excitement, and the worst part, she actually thought I'd be okay with it. The next morning, I woke up to an unfamiliar silence. No good morning from Lauren, just silence. When I walked into the kitchen, she was already there, coffee in hand, scrolling through her phone like I wasn't even standing in the same room. I waited for some kind of acknowledgement, a glance, a nod, a single word, nothing. Usually, we at least exchanged a simple "have a good day" before leaving for work, not today. When I finally said, "Morning," she didn't even look up, just took a sip of her coffee and kept scrolling. That day at work, I checked my phone a few times, expecting maybe a casual text from her. Again, nothing. No updates, no check-ins, and no questions about how my day was going. It was like I didn't exist. That night at dinner, the distance between us felt physical, like there was a wall between our seats at the table. I tried to talk to her, but her responses were short, clipped, and lifeless. Okay. Yeah. That was all I got. The woman I had shared my life with for 6 years now treated me like a stranger, and the worst part, she didn't seem to care. Over the next few days, the cold shoulder turned into something worse. Lauren stopped pretending altogether. If she wasn't ignoring me, she was being openly disrespectful, sitting on the couch next to me, texting someone and smiling down at her phone like a teenager in love. I could see the glow on her face, the way her fingers typed fast, like she was fully engaged in whatever conversation she was having. When I asked, "Who are you talking to?" she rolled her eyes and muttered, "No one." No one, right. She started going out more, dressing up like she was single, fancy outfits, taking extra time on her hair and makeup. If I asked where she was going, her answers were vague at best. Out with friends, she'd say, slipping on her heels. If I pushed for details, she'd just grab her purse and mutter, "Why do you care?" before slamming the door. Some nights, she didn't come home at all. No text, no call, no explanation. The next morning, she would walk in like nothing happened, head straight to the bathroom, and then crawl into bed without a word. I could smell alcohol, but I kept my cool because I knew what would happen if I said anything. She'd just roll her eyes, laugh in my face, and tell me I was paranoid. One night, when I had finally had enough, I stood in the doorway as she walked in, my arms crossed. "Lauren, we need to talk." She looked up at me, smirked, then laughed. "No, we don't," she said, brushing past me. Then she walked into the bedroom and shut the door in my face. That was when I realized this wasn't just indifference, it was intentional. She wanted me to feel worthless. It's one thing to feel like your wife doesn't care about you anymore, it's another thing when your child starts noticing it too. One evening, I was standing in the kitchen, clearing the dinner table, when Caleb looked up at me with his big, curious eyes. "Dad, why doesn't Lauren eat with us anymore?" For a second, I didn't know how to answer. How do you explain to an 11-year-old that the woman he considers family doesn't care about sitting at the same table as us anymore, that she chooses to ignore us? I forced a smile, ruffling his hair. "She's just been busy, buddy." He nodded, not questioning it, but the way he looked at me, he probably knew I was lying. That night, after Caleb went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, staring at nothing. I felt like a ghost in my own home, like I was slowly disappearing, and Lauren didn't even have the decency to pretend to care. I got to my breaking point one night. It was late, 2 a.m. to be exact, when I woke up to the sound of quiet giggles beside me. At first, I was disoriented, half asleep. I turned my head, blinking through the darkness, and there was Lauren, lying next to me in bed, her phone screen glowing in the dim room, her face lit up. I didn't say anything at first, I just watched. She was texting someone, scrolling, laughing softly to herself, completely unaware that I was awake. Or maybe she knew, but she just didn't care anymore. Something inside me snapped right then and there. Up until that moment, I had been holding on, trying to rationalize her behavior, telling myself that maybe this was just a phase. But watching her in that moment, smiling at another man through a screen while lying in our bed, made something very clear to me. She wasn't coming back, and more than that, she thought I would just sit there and take it. Not anymore, I told myself. I refused to be a placeholder.